Hello, 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 everybody. Happy Thursday. Welcome to another episode of Math with Mr. Taco. Today, we're getting into division with decimals, part 1. This is going to be something that we look at today and also next week as well. So don't feel like you need to know everything today. This is the introduction. This is kind of the first piece in terms of learning how to divide when there's decimals involved or when you do not have even groups, right? This is going to deal with division with remainders, because instead of having just expressing it as remainder 2 or remainder 4 or remainder 6 or expressing it as a fraction, today we're going to start to look at what happens when we express that as a decimal. You're going to need something to write on and something to write with, and then here are the I cans down here. I can divide a dividend into equal groups using the standard algorithm. We're also going to touch on using repeated subtraction, but we are going to be focusing on the standard algorithm today. If you need a refresher on how to use the standard algorithm for division, there is a lesson up on my channel from just this past Tuesday. I think there's also one from way back in the day. If you want to compare and see how I taught the same thing twice, it's probably different because I don't generally read from a script or teach the same thing 2 times in a row the exact same way. I want to be able to give people different entry points into things. And then I can express the remainder of a quotient using the tenths place. Let's get into it here. Reminder on our standard algorithm, right? We are, like it says up there, or like it says up here, going to follow this process. Divide, then subtract the amount you divided out, then regroup what you have left, then repeat. Okay? And we're going to start small. We're going to start with 43 divided by 2 equals n. We don't know our quotient yet of n. And let's set it up. We're going to put our divisor, our 2, on the side. We're going to do 43, our dividend, right here in the middle, kind of in the middle of our half an area model, right, is our long division model. Then we're going to start from our largest place and divide. How many 2's or how many groups of 2 can I make with 4 tens, right? Looking here in the 2's, 4 divided by 2 is 2. So I'm going to have our 4 tens down here to be able to subtract. And I'm going to put my 2 groups of 2 up at the top. Because again, if we're looking at this in making 2 equal groups, essentially what we did here is we put 2 tens, or 20, into each group. And we're going to subtract out 40. Because we just put 20 and 20 into groups. And we need to know how much of that 43 we have left to continue to divide. 43 minus 40 equals 3. So now we have 3 ones left, and we need to know if I have 3 things, if I have 3 ones, how many will fit into 2 equal groups? Right? I can go 1 there, and then I have 1 kind of left out here, right? So we've got a 1, we've got a 1, and 2 divided by 2 with 1 in each group. So then, after we've divided, now we're going to subtract. We put 2 into groups, so let's subtract it. And we have, as we saw from our dots, 1 remaining. Now, here's where the decimal point comes into play. Because in fourth grade division, we might have written 21, remainder 1, right? We've got 1 left that can't fit into 2 groups, right? The next step of this would be thinking, okay, if I took that 1 and I split it up into 2, if I took this one thing, I split it up into 2 equal pieces, so I could put 1 piece in each, what's the value of each piece? Right? In this case, we'd have 21 and 1/2. So that's kind of the next level. That when we were talking about division with fractions, that's what we ended up with. Essentially, this is 43 halves, right? Written as a mixed number of 21 and 1/2, right? Now, Now we're moving into decimals and what it's going to look like if we remember back to our decimal knowledge and the idea of what the decimal point does. All it does is it shows us where whole numbers begin and fractions, whole numbers end and fractions of a number begin. Okay? It always lives to the right of the ones place. So in this number 43, the decimal point is right here. Okay? And if there's no value in any of our decimal places, we can use zeros. So essentially what we're going to do, if we have one remaining, is we are going to break up this one. We're going to regroup this one, okay? And we're going to make this one 10 tenths. Just like, let's say if we had the number 430, right? If this were 430 divided by 2, right? We would have had essentially 3 tens left, subtracted 2 tens, and have 1 10 left, or 10 ones, right? The decimal point being here, and we keep our decimal points lined up just like we do in addition or subtraction. Essentially what we're saying here is this is 43 and 0 tenths, just like if we were 430, we'd have 4 hundreds, 3 tens, and 0 ones. Here we have 4 tens, 3 ones, and 0 tenths. Okay? We took our 3 ones, subtracted 2 ones. We have 1 1 left over. And we're going to regroup that into 10 tenths, right? Because 10 tenths, if we write that as a fraction, equals 1, right? It's our equivalent of 1, where the numerator and the denominator match. So now we have 10 tenths, and we're going to divide them by 2. Essentially, we have 10 things. How many of those things go into each group, right? 10 divided by what is 2? 10 divided by 5 is 2. So above our tenths place, and we're going to put our decimal point directly above the other decimal points. You see how they're nice and lined up here? Okay, so we have 10 tenths. 10 divided by 2 is 5 tenths. We subtract 1 minus 1, or 10 tenths minus 10 tenths, is a big 0, meaning we have finished and gotten to the end. We've divided everything out we can divide, and we end up with a quotient of 21 and 5 tenths, right? And as we saw earlier, right, 5 tenths is equivalent to 1/2. So when we said 21 and a half was our quotient, we haven't changed the value by making it 21 and 5 tenths, except now we're writing it out in decimal form instead of in fraction form. Let's look at one more on our digital whiteboard, and we're going to go a little bit bigger. But again, because of our place value knowledge and because all we're doing essentially with this standard algorithm is going divide, subtract, regroup, repeat. Okay, big numbers, same process as smaller numbers, just takes a little bit longer and a couple more steps. I'm also going to check the chat while we're doing that. Take a look at this problem and set it up in standard algorithm form. 786 divided by 5. Okay, chat, we've got some 21 and 5 tenths in the chat, which is great. So go ahead and set this one up as a standard algorithm division equation, or division model. I'm going to put the 5 here on, oh, let me turn my pen on, that would help. 5 here, make half of our rectangle, and our 785, or excuse me, 786 here. Okay, start with the largest place, and then divide. How many can you divide by 5? How many can you put into 5 equal groups without going over? Subtract to find what you have left. then go to the next place you can. All right, so in this case, starting with our 700s, I can take 7 and put them into 5 groups, right? With 5 divided by 5, because it can't go all the way up to 10, right? 5, 10, that's too many. So we're going to use 5 here. And if we're making our 5 groups here, there's 100 in each group. This is why we subtract 500. I think for a lot of people, this is the trickiest part, is knowing what to subtract and what to put up top as the start to our quotient. So remember, up here, this is the value of one group, and then this here is the total amount that you divided out. So this is all the groups put together. Go ahead and try that from here. See a few people working on it. You know, if this were in repeated subtraction, we wouldn't have that standard algorithm model with us, but we'd still be, you know, it would probably be safe to start with a group of 100 5s, right? Putting 100 in each group and then subtracting out 500 to see what we have left. I'm going to go ahead and subtract it. 6 minus 0, 8 minus 0, 7 minus 5. Okay, I have 286 left. And I can't take my 200s on their own and put them into 5 groups. I need to regroup and make 28 tens. So how many, if I do 28 divided by 5, how close can I get to 28 divided by 5? And this is, again, a good time to check your multiplication table. How close, if I go down the 5s row, how close can I get to 28 without going over, right? 30 is too much, so I'm going to go back. I know 25 divided by 5 is 5. So I'm going to put my 25 tens down here with a 0, so I don't forget about my 1s. And then 25 divided by 5 is 5 tens, so I'm going to put my 5 up top. Essentially what I've done here is I've taken 5 tens, or 50, and put them in each group. Now I have to subtract so I know what I have left. 6 minus 0 is 6. 8 minus 5 is 3. And 2 minus 2 is 0, so I can leave that there. So now I have 36 divided by 5. Let's consult our handy-dandy multiplication table again. How close can I get to 36 without going over? Yodelay-hee-hoo, yodelay-hee-hoo. If you aren't getting this Price is Right reference, I'm so sorry, but like, you're at home. Like, maybe we should have a day where we just watch Price is Right and we learn these games, because it's culturally important, to me at least. All the way, all the way, all the way. How close can we get to 36 without going over? I think it's 35 divided by 5. So I'm going to put my 35 ones down at the bottom. I'm going to scoop the whole thing up so you can see it. 35 divided by 5 is 7. I'm going to put my 7 up top. Okay, so now that I've divided, time to subtract. 6 minus 5 is 1. 3 minus 3 is 0. Essentially what I've done here is I put 7 ones into each. And look, my quotient up here matches what's in my model. There's 157 in each group. Okay, now I've got 1 left. What am I going to do with this? I'm going to convert it into tenths. I'm going to, and if it helps you to add a decimal point here and put a 0 here, so you remember that we're adding that 0 to convert it to 10 tenths, 786 and 0 tenths. Okay, and we'll have a decimal point in our answer as well. So if you get past the ones place and you've still got value left, add a decimal point, tack a 0 onto the end, and what you've done is you've converted it into 10 tenths. Okay? Now, take your 10 tenths, divide that by 5. 10 divided by 5 equals what? Or what times 5 equals 10? Right? Consult your table here. Zoop, there's our 10. And it's times 2. So I'm going to take our 10 tenths, put them there. I'm going to take my 2 tenths in each group. 0.2, 0.2, 2, 2 tenths, 4 tenths, 6 tenths, 8 tenths, 10 tenths. So that shows I've evenly, and I know it looks like now 27 hundredths, but we'll remember what we did. Then 10 minus 10 equals 0. So I know I have arrived at my final quotient of 157 and 2 tenths. Okay, and I also got some questions. How do I know that's right? Use your inverse operations if you're not sure if that's right or not. What's the inverse operation to division? Yeah, it's multiplication. So what you can do is you can take your quotient, and I'll scoot it this way. 157 and 2 tenths times 5. And if you arrive at 786, you know you are correct, right? 2 tenths times 5 equals 1. 7 ones times 5 is 35. 5 tens times 5, 25 tens. 100 times 5 equals 5 hundreds. Add them up. 1 plus 5 is 6, 3 plus 5 is 8, 7 plus 5, there's 7. 2 plus 5 is 7. And there we have now confirmed our answer is accurate by using an inverse operation. Okay, so today on your exit ticket, it is of the utmost importance to really continue to follow this pattern, right? Divide, subtract, regroup, repeat, okay? Once you get to the ones, if you get to the ones place and you still have value remaining, you divide out your ones, you still have value remaining, add your decimal point, add a 0 in the tenths place to convert that into a group of tenths, right? This could be, you know, if it was 40, I don't know, if it was 48 divided by 10, for instance, right? You might end up with an 8 down here that you convert into tenths and do 80 divided by 10, right? And then don't forget to add a decimal point here as well. If you're converting into tenths, you need to make sure that your quotient also has room for some tenths, okay? In today's exit ticket, there's only going to be tenths. In future exit tickets, and we'll get to that next week, you might need to add a hundredths place because you've still got some value left to divide out. You might need to add a thousandths place. And you might, and we'll go over this next week, in future lessons, you might get to a point where you're never going to run out of value, and what do you do about that? We'll get into that in a future date. For now, just remember, you're going to need a tenths place today, so be prepared once you subtract your ones to add that decimal point, add a 0 in the tenths place, and then keep dividing, subtracting, regrouping. All right. Cheers, everybody. Thank you for listening. Office hour will be open at 11 o'clock for those who need it, and I will see you soon.